In the cold dark of space just past the moon's orbit, silence ruled. No engines roared, no weapons fired. Only the slow drift of broken metal and frozen gas filled the void. What had once been a mighty alien armada now floated in pieces, twisted hulls, shattered wings, and the blackened skeletons of warships that had dared to challenge Earth. Among the wreckage, a few escape pods tumbled aimlessly. Inside one of them, HFY War pressed his forehead against the cold glass of the viewport. His breath fogged the surface, but he didn't wipe it away. He just stared. His uniform was torn, his face streaked with soot and dried blood. His hands trembled, not from cold but from disbelief. Before him, untouched and unmoving, hung Earth's defense line. Dozens of human warships formed a perfect ring around the planet. They were not grand or ornate like the alien flagships. They were sleek, black, and sharp-edged, built for function, not show. No lights blinked on their surfaces. No signals pulsed from their comms. They simply waited like wolves that had already won the hunt. Kale had seen battle before. He'd crushed rebellions across 3 star systems. He'd watched entire worlds burn under the might of the Xeran hegemony. But this was different. There had been no great fleet-to-fleet clash. No heroic last stands. Just sudden, brutal silence. One moment, his armada was advancing. The next, ships vanished in flashes of light too fast to track. Alarms screamed, comms filled with static and screams. Then, nothing. He turned from the viewport and looked at his crew. Only 2 remained alive in the pod. One, a young sensor officer named Jessa, sat curled in the corner, eyes wide and unblinking. The other, Chief Engineer Ronan, was trying to reroute power to the life support with shaking hands. "Any signal?" Kale asked, his voice hoarse. Ronan shook his head. "Nothing. Not from the fleet. Not from command. Not even a distress ping. It's like, they're all gone," Jessa whispered. "The humans didn't even chase us." Kale said nothing. He knew she was right. After the battle, if it could even be called that, the human ships hadn't moved. They hadn't fired on escape pods. They hadn't broadcast victory messages. They'd just held their position, as if they'd expected this outcome all along. Outside the pod, something glowed in the distance. A small satellite, barely the size of a cargo container, drifted near a broken Xyran cruiser. On its side, bright red letters pulsed softly against the blackness of space. "You were warned." Kale remembered those words. They'd come 3 weeks ago, in a simple message sent to every alien ship that crossed the edge of the solar system. No threats, no bluster, just 4 words repeated on every frequency. "You were warned." The Xeran High Command had laughed. "Primitive creatures," Admiral Rex had called them. "They build toys and call them weapons." The fleet had pressed on, confident in their superior shields, their plasma lances, their centuries of conquest. Now, Kale wondered if the humans had known exactly what they were doing. Far below, on the far side of the moon, a human orbital station hummed with quiet activity. Aegis Station wasn't large, just a cluster of modules wrapped around a central command core, but it was the nerve center of Earth's entire defense grid. Inside the main control room, Captain Eli Dawson stood with his arms crossed, watching the aftermath unfold on a dozen screens. He was in his early 30s, with short brown hair and a calm face that rarely showed emotion, but his eyes were tired. They'd been tired for weeks. Around him, officers moved with quiet efficiency. Lena Ruiz, a comms specialist with sharp eyes and a steady voice, monitored alien escape pods. Ben Carter, a young tactical officer, double-checked the status of the outer drone nets. No one spoke loudly. No one celebrated. They all knew how close it had been. "All hostile capital ships confirmed destroyed or disabled," Lena reported. "Only 17 escape pods detected. None are armed." Eli nodded. "Keep tracking them. Don't engage. Just watch." "Yes, sir." He walked to the large observation window. Earth hung below, blue and peaceful, wrapped in clouds and city lights. It looked so fragile, and yet it had just shattered one of the most feared fleets in the known galaxy without losing a single capital ship. "Still hard to believe," Ben said, joining him at the window. "What part?" Eli asked. "That they actually came, after the warning." "After everything we showed them," Eli sighed. "Arrogance is universal, I guess. They thought we were bluffing. They thought we were weak because we don't build giant flagships or wear shiny armor. But we were ready," Lena said from behind them. "Samira's traps worked better than anyone hoped." Eli smiled faintly. Samira Khan, the chief engineer on Mars Orbital, had spent the last 5 years designing a defense system unlike anything the galaxy had seen. No massive battleships, no planet-killer cannons, just thousands of hidden weapons. Railgun emplacements buried in asteroids, drone swarms disguised as space junk, and AI-guided mines that could predict enemy movements before they happened. Humanity hadn't tried to outgun the aliens. They'd outthought them. A soft chime sounded. A new message had arrived from General Nora Briggs, commander of the United Earth Defense Council. Eli opened it. It was short. Stand down from Red Alert. Initiate Cleanup Protocol Alpha. Good work. He closed the message and looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, other alien powers were watching, listening, learning. They'll tell stories about this, Ben said quietly, about how Earth stood alone and broke an armada without firing a single broadside. Maybe, Eli said. But I hope they remember the warning more than the fight. On the screen behind them, the red words on the satellite glowed again. You were warned. In his escape pod, Kale finally tore his eyes away from the human fleet. He slumped into his seat, exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. For the first time in his life, he felt small, not just defeated, but humbled. He looked at Jessa. Do you think they'll let us live? She didn't answer right away. Then softly she said, They didn't have to leave the pods intact. They could have wiped us out, but they didn't, Ronan grunted. Maybe they're just waiting. Or maybe, Jessa said, they meant what they said. They warned us. We didn't listen. Now we pay the price, but not with our lives. Just with our pride. Kale closed his eyes. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, and Earth, calm and quiet, watched over it all like a guardian who had done what was necessary and nothing more. 3 weeks before the battle, the Xeran envoy ship Iron Vow entered the solar system without permission. It was a sleek vessel, all sharp angles and glowing purple veins of energy, flying the banner of the Xeran hegemony, a union of a dozen conquered species ruled by a single warrior caste. Its captain, Commander Vrel, had been sent with a simple message: surrender or be erased. Earth's orbital defense grid detected the ship the moment it crossed the orbit of Neptune. Within minutes, a human patrol skiff hailed it. This is Earth Defense Vessel Watcher 7-1. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself and state your purpose, Vrel scoffed. We are the Xeran hegemony. We do not identify to primitives. Open a channel to your world leaders. We bring terms of annexation. The human voice on the other end didn't sound angry, just calm. You are not welcome here. Turn back now, Vrel laughed. Or what, you will throw rocks at us? The comms went silent for a full minute. Then the same voice returned. You were warned. The transmission ended. No threats. No countdown. Just those 4 words repeated once, then gone. Back on Earth in a secure bunker beneath the rocky hills of Colorado, General Nora Briggs watched the exchange on a screen. She was in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too many close calls. She turned to her aide, a young officer named Danny Cole. Log it, she said. Official warning issued. Time-stamped. Broadcast on all public and military channels. Yes, ma'am. And alert Project Bastion. Full readiness. Danny hesitated. Do you really think they'll come? Nora looked out the window at the mountains. They think we're weak because we don't conquer other worlds. They don't understand that we only fight when we have to. And when we do, we don't lose. Meanwhile, on Mars orbital shipyards, Samira Khan stood in a dimly lit control room, surrounded by holographic schematics. She was lean, with calloused hands and a mind that moved faster than most computers. For 5 years, she'd led a secret team designing Earth's real defense. Not giant warships, but a web of hidden systems scattered across the solar system. Activate Phase 1, she told her team. Deploy the ghost drones. Hide them in the Kuiper Belt. Make them look like ice fragments. Her assistant, a quiet man named Leo, nodded. What about the lunar railguns? Keep them cold. No power until I say so. We don't want them to see the heat signatures. Samira knew the Xyrans would scan for weapons. They'd expect big ships, big guns. They wouldn't expect thousands of tiny, smart machines waiting in the dark, ready to strike from every direction at once. On the bridge of the Iron Vow, Vrel reported back to Admiral Rex. The humans refused. They gave us a warning like children scolding a storm. Rex's face filled the main view screen. He was massive, with armored skin and eyes that glowed faintly red. Fools, he growled. They have no dreadnoughts, no quantum lances, No unity among their nations. They are fractured, emotional, weak. Still, Vrel said carefully, they sounded certain. Certainty without power is delusion, Rex snapped. Ready the Grand Fleet. 300 capital ships. We will show them what true strength looks like. Within days, the Xeran Armada began to move. From deep space, from hidden bases near dead stars, their ships gathered. Carriers the size of small moons. Destroyers bristling with plasma cannons. Flagships that had crushed rebellions across the spiral arm. They came not to negotiate, but to erase. On Earth, people went about their lives. Children went to school. Farmers harvested crops. Engineers fixed power lines. But in the shadows, humanity prepared. Eli Dawson, then a lieutenant stationed on the moon, was promoted to captain overnight. He was given command of Aegis Station. Not because he was the most experienced, but because he understood the plan. He knew they wouldn't win by matching the enemy. They'd win by being smarter. Our job isn't to fight, he told his crew during their first briefing. It's to make them think they're winning, until they're not. Lena Ruiz, newly assigned to comms, asked, "What if they just bombard Earth from orbit? Skip the fleet fight?" "They won't," Eli said. "They want to claim the planet intact. They want our resources, our people, our tech. They'll try to take us alive. That gives us time." Ben Carter, fresh out of the academy, looked nervous. "But what if they don't play by the rules?" Eli smiled. "Then we remind them why we sent the warning." As the Xyran fleet crossed the orbit of Jupiter, Earth's governments went silent. No panic broadcasts, no emergency alerts, just calm instructions. Continue normal operations. Trust your defense forces. In schools, teachers didn't mention the coming storm. In hospitals, doctors kept working, because panic was the enemy's weapon, and humanity refused to hand it to them. Samira, now stationed on a hidden platform near Titan, watched the alien fleet on her screens. They moved in perfect formation, proud and slow like a parade. She tapped a command, "Ghost drones, activate." Across the outer solar system, thousands of tiny machines powered up. They looked like space dust. They moved like asteroids. But inside, they carried micro-warheads, signal jammers, and hacking protocols designed to slip past alien firewalls. Back on the Sovereign Maw, Admiral Rex stood on his command deck, arms crossed. "Scan for human defenses," he ordered. "Nothing, sir," said a sensor officer. "No fleet. No orbital stations beyond the moon. No energy spikes," Rex grinned. "They hid their toys. Or they never had any." He gave the order. "Full advance. Burn their cities until they beg." The fleet surged forward faster now, eager for victory. On Earth, in a small town in Oregon, an old man named Carl Jenkins sat on his porch sipping coffee. He'd served in the early orbital conflicts decades ago. He knew what silence before a storm sounded like. His granddaughter Maya ran up to him. "Grandpa, is it true? Are the aliens coming?" He looked at the sky. "Maybe. But if they do, they'll learn something important." "What?" "That Earth isn't just dirt and water. It's home, and we protect home." As the Xyran ships passed Saturn, the first anomaly struck. A destroyer on the fleet's left flank suddenly lost power. Its shields flickered out. Before anyone could react, a streak of light too fast to see slammed into its core. The ship exploded in a silent bloom of fire. "What was that?" Rex roared. "Unknown," came the reply. "No weapon signature. No launch detected." Then another ship vanished. Then a carrier's engines froze mid-burn on Aegis Station. Eli watched the chaos unfold. "Phase 2, he said softly. Samira's voice came over the comms, calm and clear. "They're walking into the net. Let's close it." And far away in the cold dark between the planets, the red words waited. Already written, already true. You were warned. The Xyran fleet crossed the orbit of Mars with growing unease. What had begun as a proud march toward easy victory now felt like walking through a haunted forest. Ships flickered on sensors and then vanished, comms filled with static. Orders got lost in loops of corrupted data. No explosions, no enemy ships in sight. Just silence, and sudden total loss. On the bridge of the Sovereign Maw, Admiral Rex slammed his fist on the command console. "Find the source! Scan for cloaked vessels, mines, anything." "Scans show nothing, sir," a technician said, voice tight with fear. "It's like space itself is attacking us." Meanwhile, deep in the asteroid belt, a human drone skiff no bigger than a truck drifted behind a chunk of rock. Inside, Ben Carter held his breath as he watched 3 Zyran destroyers pass just kilometers away. His ship was wrapped in thermal dampening foil and coated in radar-absorbing dust. To alien sensors, he was just another piece of space junk. "GhostNet is live," he whispered into his comm. "Sending pulse," he tapped a command. From hidden points across the belt, hundreds of micro-drones released a burst of electromagnetic noise. Not strong enough to damage systems, but enough to scramble targeting computers. The Zyran ship's weapons locked onto each other by mistake. One fired. Another returned fire. Within seconds, 2 destroyers tore each other apart. Ben didn't cheer. He just logged the kill and powered down his skiff, waiting for the next move. Back near Earth, Eli Dawson stood in the dim light of Aegis Station's war room. Screens showed the Zyran fleet breaking formation, ships clustering together like frightened herd animals. It was exactly what they'd hoped for. "They're grouping up," Lena Ruiz said, eyes on the comms feed. "Trying to protect each other." "Good," Eli replied. "Now they're one big target." He turned to the weapons officer. "Activate lunar batteries. Fire pattern Delta." On the far side of the moon, panels slid open in the gray dust. Beneath them, rows of railgun barrels rose silently into position. These weren't ordinary weapons. They fired tungsten rods at 20% the speed of light. No explosive needed, just pure kinetic force. At that speed, a rod the size of a telephone pole could punch through a dreadnought's core like paper. The first shot fired. It left no trail. No warning. It simply appeared inside the engine chamber of a Zyran carrier and turned everything within 50 meters into plasma. The second shot hit a command cruiser. The third, a fuel depot ship. Each strike was precise, silent, and unstoppable. On the Sovereign Maw, alarms finally blared, but too late. Rex stared at the damage reports piling up. How are they hitting us from so far? Where are their guns? No one could answer. At the same time, near Jupiter's moon, Samira Khan watched from her hidden platform as her final trap unfolded. For years, her team had seeded the outer system with what looked like harmless research probes. In truth, each one held a swarm of nanites, microscopic machines programmed to seek out alien alloy, replicate and eat through critical systems. Now, they activated on a Zyran repair frigate. A technician noticed a strange black film spreading across a coolant pipe. He wiped it away, only for it to return seconds later. Within minutes, the film had crawled into the ship's mainframe. Lights flickered. Doors sealed shut. Life support failed. The frigate went dark. Back on Awega Station, Lena picked up a faint signal. Escape pod launching from the iron vow. "Only one," Eli nodded. "Let it go. We're not here to kill survivors. We're here to send a message." As the battle raged, human ships never appeared in force. Instead, they struck like shadows. A recon skiff near Venus released a cloud of signal mimics, fake distress calls that lured Zyran rescue ships into minefields. A maintenance drone left floating near Saturn suddenly sprang to life and latched onto a destroyer's hull, drilling into its reactor with a laser no bigger than a pencil. The Zyrans fought bravely, but they were fighting ghosts. Every time they turned, the danger came from somewhere new. Their pride turned to panic. Their discipline broke. Cale Vor, then a mid-level officer aboard a support carrier, watched his ship's shields fail one by one. "Reroute power," he shouted. "Get us behind the flagship." But the Sovereign Maw was already burning. A single human frigate, no larger than a cargo hauler, had slipped through the chaos and fired a neutrino pulse weapon, a prototype so new even Earth's own scientists weren't sure it would work. It did. The pulse passed through armor like light through glass and fried every neural circuit in the Zyran command core. Without orders, the fleet fell apart. Cale barely made it to an escape pod before his ship split in two. As he launched into the void, he saw the last thing he ever expected. Human ships pulling back, not chasing, not finishing the job, just stopping. On Earth, in the Colorado bunker, General Nora Briggs received the final report. All major Zyran capital ships disabled or destroyed. No human losses beyond drones and automated systems. Orbital defenses intact. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she said, "Broadcast the message again. On all channels. Loop it." The words appeared on every comm satellite, every recovered alien screen, every drifting piece of wreckage. "You were warned." In Oregon, Carl Jenkins turned off his radio. The sky was clear. No fire, no falling ships. Just stars, quiet and steady. His granddaughter Maya tugged his sleeve. "Did we win, Grandpa?" He looked at her. We didn't have to win a war. We just had to make sure no one wanted to start one. On Aegis Station, Eli walked to the observation deck. The battle was over. The debris field stretched for millions of kilometers, but Earth glowed below, safe and whole. Lena joined him. They'll tell stories about this, she said. Maybe, he replied. But I hope they remember the warning more than the weapons. Far away in the dark, a single escape pod tumbled through the ruins. Inside, Vor stared at the unmoving human line and finally understood. They hadn't needed a bigger fleet. They'd needed better minds, stronger will, and the quiet courage to protect what was theirs, without cruelty, without greed, without losing themselves. The stars watched. And for the first time in a long time, the galaxy learned to fear not humanity's weapons but their warning. In the weeks after the battle, silence returned to near-Earth space, but it was a different kind of silence. Not the quiet before a storm, but the hush after a storm has passed, the kind that comes with grief, relief, and questions that have no easy answers. Vor's escape pod drifted in a slow orbit near the moon. Power was low. Oxygen would last another 2 days. He had stopped trying to raise his fleet. There was no one left to answer. Through the cracked viewport, he watched human salvage drones move among the wreckage, small, quiet machines that cut, sealed, and collected debris with careful precision. They avoided the escape pods. They did not threaten. They simply worked. Jessa, the young sensor officer, sat curled against the wall. She hadn't spoken much since the battle. Now she whispered, "Do you think they'll let us go?" Ronan, the engineer, rubbed his tired eyes. "They could have killed us already. They chose not to." Kale said nothing. He remembered the arrogance of his people, the way they'd laughed at Earth's warning, the way they'd called humans soft as disorganized and went doomed. Now, looking at the clean lines of the human defense grid, at the way they handled victory with no fanfare, he saw the truth. Humanity wasn't soft. They were disciplined. They didn't fight for glory. They fought to protect. On Earth, cities were quiet. There were no parades, no victory speeches on every channel. People gathered in parks and homes not to celebrate but to remember. Millions had died in the first hours of the attack. When Xeran ships had fired blindly at orbital stations, communication hubs, and power grids before the defense grid fully activated. Hospitals overflowed, families mourned. In New Delhi, Samira Khan stood before a newly built memorial wall. It was made of black stone etched with names, not just soldiers but engineers, medics, teachers, and children who had been in the wrong place when the first shots fell. She ran her fingers over one name, Priya Mehta, orbital medtech, age 28. A young cadet stood beside her, eyes red. "Why didn't they warn us sooner?" he asked. Samira shook her head. "They did. We all knew the risk. But we also knew we couldn't hide. If we ran, they'd chase us. If we begged, they'd see us as weak. So we prepared, and we stood." She looked up at the sky. "We didn't want this war, but we knew it might come. So we built not just weapons, but a promise that no one would take our home without paying a price they'd never forget." Back on Aegis Station, Eli Dawson reviewed damage reports. Most of Earth's defenses were intact. A few drone networks were offline. One lunar railgun needed repairs, but overall the system had worked better than anyone dreamed. Lena Ruiz entered the command room holding a data pad. The last escape pod just signaled. "They're out of food. Asking for help." Eli didn't hesitate. "Send a supply drop. Water, rations, medical kits. No weapons. No tracking devices. You trust them?" Ben Carter asked from the doorway. "I don't have to trust them," Eli said. "I just have to be better than they were." That evening, General Nora Briggs addressed the Solar Senate, a council of Earth's United Nations and off-world colonies. She stood alone on a plain stage, no banners, no music. "We warned them," she began, voice steady, not out of pride, not out of fear, but out of mercy. "We knew what our defenses could do. We didn't want to use them. But when they chose to ignore us, they chose this outcome." She paused. "We do not celebrate death. We mourn it, even our enemies. But we will not apologize for protecting our people. Earth is not a prize. It is a home, and we will defend it with everything we have." After the speech, she walked alone through the gardens behind the council building. Danny Cole found her there holding a small photo. Her grandson, who had been on a space station when it was hit. You did what you had to do, he said softly. She nodded, but I still wish it hadn't come to this. Meanwhile, on Mars, engineers began dismantling the last of Project Bastion's hidden weapons. Not because the threat was gone, but because the message had been sent. The galaxy would remember, and if others came, they would think twice. In Oregon, Carl Jenkins took his granddaughter Maya to a hilltop at dusk. They sat on a blanket watching the stars appear one by one. "Are the aliens still out there?" she asked. "Oh yes," he said. "Lots of them. Some might be kind. Some might be cruel. But now they know something important." "What?" "That Earth isn't easy prey. We don't start fights, but we finish them." She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "I want to be an engineer like Samira Khan." Carl smiled. "Then you'll build things that protect people. Not just weapons, but hope." Back in space, a human supply pod docked gently with Kale's escape vessel. A robotic arm extended, placing crates inside the airlock. No humans came. No demands were made. Just help, offered without condition. Kale opened one crate. Inside were clean water packs, nutrient bars, and a small medical kit. Taped to the side was a note written in simple, clear symbols that translated to live, learn, do better. He stared at it for a long time. Jessa peeked over his shoulder. "They're giving us a second chance. Or a lesson," Ronan said. Kale looked out at the unmoving human fleet. They hadn't gloated. They hadn't enslaved the survivors. They had simply said, "You were warned," and let the consequences speak for themselves. For the first time, he understood what true strength looked like. It wasn't in the size of your ships or the fire of your guns. It was in the choice to show mercy after you'd already won. And in the quiet dark of space, surrounded by the ruins of his people's pride, Kyle Vor wept, not from fear, but from shame, and the first stirrings of respect. Months passed. The wreckage near Earth began to thin, as salvage teams from neutral systems arrived under strict human escort. They came in small unarmed vessels flying flags of peace, Qatari scholars, Velix traders, even a few former Ziran allies who had refused to join the invasion. All of them wanted to see for themselves what had happened. They expected to find a graveyard of human warships, great broken hulks matching the scale of the Ziran dreadnoughts. Instead, they found almost nothing. No massive human battleships, no scorched flagships, just a few small drone husks, a handful of spent railgun casings, and the silent, intact defense line still circling Earth like a ring of guardians. Dr. Liraman, a xenohistorian from the Qatari Science Guild, stood on the observation deck of her ship, Star Scribe, staring at the debris field through a magnified lens.
"It doesn't make sense," she murmured.
"How did they do this with no fleet?" Her assistant, a young analyst named Thomas, pulled up sensor logs. According to recovered Ziran data, the humans never launched a single capital ship. Their attacks came from asteroids, moons, even empty space. It was like the whole solar system was armed. Lyra frowned. Then their strength wasn't in ships. It was in planning. In patience. She requested access to human public archives, a bold move but one the Earth Council granted without hesitation. What she found surprised her more than the battle itself. The files weren't filled with weapons, schematics, or war plans. They held blueprints for schools on Mars, water recyclers for lunar bases, fusion reactors for African towns, and medical drones used in flood zones. Humanity had spent decades building a civilization, not an empire. They protected all this, she whispered. Not because they loved war, but because they loved life. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. Cities rebuilt. Children went back to school. Farmers planted new crops, but something had changed. People spoke more kindly to strangers. Neighbors checked on each other. There was a quiet pride, not in having won, but in having stood together. In a small workshop in Portland, a retired engineer named Carl Jenkins helped his granddaughter Maya solder wires onto a homemade radio. Outside, the sky was clear. No alarms, no fear. "Why do you think they came back?" Maya asked, her small hands steady on the circuit board. "Who?" Carl asked. "The aliens. The ones in the little ships." "Curiosity," he said, "and maybe fear. They want to know if we'll attack them now that we've shown our strength." "Will we?" Carl smiled. "We didn't attack them when they were weak. Why would we attack them when they're asking questions? On Aegis Station, Eli Dawson met with the first official alien envoy since the battle, a Qatari diplomat named Oren Vel. The meeting took place in a simple conference room. No guards, no weapons, just 2 chairs and a table. "Your people confuse us," Oren said, his voice soft, his skin shimmering faintly with emotion. "You had the power to destroy our ships, yet you spared the escape pods. You could demand tribute, yet you ask for nothing." Eli leaned forward. "We don't want your fear. We want your respect, and maybe someday your friendship. But why show mercy to those who meant to enslave you? Because if we become like them," Eli said, "then they already won." Oren was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. "My people will share what we've learned, not just about your weapons, but about your choices." Back on Mars, Samira Khan gave a rare public talk to a group of off-world students. She stood in a sunlit dome, red dust swirling gently outside. "People think we won because of railguns or drones," she said. "But we won because we agreed, every nation, every colony, that Earth was worth protecting. No one argued over who should pay. No one hid while others fought. We all prepared, together." A student raised a hand. "What if another fleet comes? Bigger than the Zirans?" Samira looked out at the horizon. "Then we'll be ready again. But I hope they listen to the warning next time." Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the solar system, Kyle Vor and his crew were finally allowed to leave. The humans gave them a small transport ship, just enough to reach neutral space. No weapons, no tracking, just a chance to go home. As their ship powered up, Jessa looked back at Earth one last time. "Do you think they'll ever trust us?" Kale shook his head. "Not until we earn it. But maybe we can try." On the comms channel, a final message came through, not from a general or a captain, but from a civilian network. It was a short video. Children planting trees in a rebuilt city, doctors healing the wounded, engineers sharing designs with off-world partners. The words beneath it read, "This is what we protect." Kyle saved the file. He didn't know why. Maybe to remind himself, maybe to show his people what they had almost destroyed. In the Qatari archives, Dr. Lyra Men finished her report. She titled it not The Battle of Earth, but The Warning That Saved a Galaxy. In it, she wrote, "Humanity did not seek war. They prepared for it so they would never have to fight again. Their greatest weapon was not fire, but the choice to show restraint after victory. And far away on 1,000 worlds, leaders who had once dreamed of conquest now paused. They looked at their war plans. They thought of the silent human fleet, and they remembered the red words that still glowed on an old satellite near the moon. You were warned, not as a threat, but as a lesson, and for the first time the galaxy began to listen." Years went by. The solar system healed. The last pieces of Zyran wreckage were either recycled or pushed into the sun. The red message on the old comm satellite still glowed. You were warned. But now it wasn't just a warning. It was a monument. School groups from Earth, Mars, and the Belt colonies visited it on field trips. Teachers used it to talk about responsibility, peace, and the cost of pride. Aliens came more often now, not with weapons, but with open hands. Trade ships from the Qatari Alliance brought rare minerals in exchange for human medical tech. Velic scientists shared star maps in return for clean energy designs. Even former Zyran worlds, now free from the old hegemony, sent quiet envoys, not to apologize but to learn. They studied human history, not just the battle but what came before and after. They read about how Earth's nations had once fought each other, but chose to unite when the stars grew dangerous. They saw videos of people sharing food after disasters, of engineers working through the night to fix water systems, of children from different countries playing together in orbital schools. Dr. Lyra Men, now an elder scholar, published a new book called The Quiet Strength. In it, she wrote, "Humans do not shout their power. They live it. They build. They heal. They protect. And when forced to fight, they do so not to conquer, but to return to peace as quickly as possible." On Earth, life moved on. Cities grew greener. Oceans grew cleaner. Space elevators hummed with cargo, not soldiers. And in a small town in Oregon, Carl Jenkins sat on his porch again, this time with his granddaughter Maya beside him. She was 16 now, her hands calloused from building robots in her school's workshop. "I got accepted," she said, eyes bright, "to the Lunar Engineering Academy." Carl smiled. "Proud of you." They want me to help design the new deep space warning network, she said. Not weapons. Just sensors. So we'll always know who's coming, and whether they mean peace. Good, he said, because the best defense isn't a gun. It's knowing when you don't need one. Far above, on Aegis Station, now mostly a research and observation post, Eli Dawson stood at the same window he'd watched the battle from years ago. He was older now, his hair streaked with gray, but his eyes were still calm. Beside him stood Lena Ruiz, now commander of Earth's early response fleet. Peace is strange, she said. I almost missed the alerts. Don't say that too loud, Eli joked. You'll jinx it. They both knew the truth. Peace wasn't the absence of danger. It was the result of constant care. The defense grid still ran. The drone nets still watched. But now they also shared data with friendly alien systems. Early warnings went both ways. A chime sounded. A message came in from the outer rim. A Qatari patrol had spotted a small unknown vessel heading toward the solar system. No weapons. No hostile signals. Just a lone ship flying a white flag. Should we send a greeting? Lena asked. Eli nodded. Open a channel. Use the old words. A moment later, across every public and military frequency, a simple message played. Clear, calm, and firm. This is Earth defense. You are entering protected space. Identify yourself and state your purpose. There was a pause. Then a voice replied, nervous but respectful. This is Captain Nessa Rohr of the free vessel Dawn Traveler. We come in peace. We only wish to speak and to learn, Eli smiled. Welcome to the solar system. You were warned, but you listened. That's a good start. On Mars, Samira Khan walked through a new greenhouse dome, her hands brushing the leaves of tomato plants grown in red soil. Beside her was a young engineer from a former Zyran world, learning how to build sustainable farms in harsh climates. Why help us? The young man asked. After what my people did? Samira looked at him. Because you're not your past. And neither are we. We build the future one choice at a time. Back in the escape pod that had once held Kael Vor, now preserved in the Earth Memorial Museum, a tour guide spoke to a group of students. This is where it ended for the Zyran fleet. Not with a bang, but with a lesson. The humans didn't destroy the survivors. They gave them food, a ship, and a chance to change. A child raised a hand. Did they change? The guide nodded. Kael Vor went on to help rebuild his world. He became a teacher. He told everyone who would listen, never ignore a warning spoken in calm voices. It means they've already decided they won't ask twice. In Oregon, Maya finished packing her bag for the moon. As she zipped it shut, she looked out her window at the stars. She thought of the red words, the silent fleet, the quiet courage of people who built instead of burned. She picked up a small radio she'd built herself, a gift for her grandfather. On its side, she'd etched 4 words in neat letters. You were warned not as a threat, but as a promise. And as the night deepened, Earth turned gently in the dark, guarded not by fear, but by the steady will of those who called it home. Far beyond, in the endless sea of stars, other worlds watched, and for the first time in a long time, they chose to listen.